says, it says in this verse, no, Prabhupada says in the purport rather, that this is a situation that Brahma has that's exclusive to him. That the ability to create is not something that ordinary living entities can do. So Prabhupada points out that Brahma is the most intelligent entity in the entire universe. So we don't usually get to use our intelligence wisely enough. And as a result, we end up staying in this world for many, many births until we get to the point of giving up our envious state of mind, so to speak. There's a film from the 1990s, a long time ago, and the catch line in the film was "I see dead people." So that's been made into a T-shirt with a little adaptation. I see stupid people. And this is actually all of us. When we look at each other, we should think, oh, they're also stupid because we've decided to stay here in this material world for birth after birth. We've got the opportunity of going back to home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada has told us that the ability to go back to home, back to Godhead can be achieved in this one lifetime just by committing ourselves. So, but, we're surrounded by stupid people who think, oh, yes, this is a very nice place. Let me stay here. Let me enjoy this place. This will be my permanent residence. At any rate, Brahma sees this monumental task that's ahead of him. It's a huge task, organizing and planning the construction of all the different universes and the material creation, which, first of all, we should know, are only existing to accommodate we, the fallen souls. This is Lord Vishnu's mercy upon us. Okay, you want to be, the owner, the controller, the enjoyer, that. Here, let me give you a place, the material world. B, that it's a temporary facility. It's not meant to be our eternal residence. And C, it's only a quarter of the entire creation. So we think that I was just listening to Prabhupada say on a lecture this morning from Mayapur, 1974. He was talking about the material universes. There are unlimited universes in this material world. Nonetheless, there's still only one quarter of the entire creation. So it's a huge task. Now, we just, this past weekend, we saw the New York Rath Yatra took place. And it's an enormous festival. It accommodates hundreds and hundreds of devotees, arranges for thousands of plates of prasadam to be distributed, erecting dozens of tents and securing all types of different permits and permissions and engaging many, many, many devotees in building the carts and moving the deities and setting up and breaking down and overseeing and on and on and on and on and on. It's a monumental service. All glories to the devotees that do that service. Now, my wife and I lived in New York for many, many years, and I was involved in helping with some of those Rath Yatras, and it is overwhelming, to say the least. Just to think about it all in the beginning and then make out a chart of what's got to be done and then start to accomplish these things. And this takes place months and months in advance. Actually, I know the devotees in New York, and they start organizing next year's the day after, or maybe the week after. They take a little break to breathe, but right away, because it's such an involved thing. But as a service to Guru and Krishna, as a service to the suffering humanity of New York City, as a service to all the Vaishnavas, those devotees pray, depend on, and take shelter of the Lord. And thus, they're successful. This year, even with the rain that took place, the Rath Yatra was again another overwhelming success. So this is the mood of the devotees. When faced with a very challenging circumstance, a very challenging service, they pray, depend, and take shelter of the Lord. Now, if we expand that kind of organizational skill set to managing the entire universe, and not only managing the universe, but creating all the different types of bodies for the desires, the unlimited desires of all the living entities, We can see this is a very serious service. This is not something taken lightly. Add to that, that as Brahma is looking out over the horizon, trying to figure out how to do this, he sees the waters of devastation. So he's feeling very challenged. These waters haven't fully dissipated yet as he's creating the new universe. Really just, I mean, overwhelming. So, sometimes in different parts of the world, maybe on the coast of Africa, there's certainly on the coast of Florida here, there's hurricanes and typhoons, and they're predicted, and everyone falls into panic mode. They start preparing for the impact of these devastating waters that are coming, buying extra food and boarding up houses and going to higher ground, all of these different preparations, because everyone is very, very concerned, very fearful of what's coming. And the waters we're talking about in these types of hurricanes and typhoons are nothing compared to the devastation of the universe. Those flood waters, everything in the universe is flooded completely. Maybe there's a few higher planets that are spared from the impact of the universal flooding, but basically everything is destroyed. So, this knowledge of this, coupled with the knowledge that Brahma has of the service he's got to perform, it can be very, very perplexing, filling him with a lot of anxiety. Now, here's where we get to the glory of Krishna's relationship with his devotees. We all know that Krishna is the super soul in the heart of all living beings. And as the Bhagavad Gita tells us, although there's two birds in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed in his activity of eating, and thus the anxiety and moroseness that produces as he's trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or another, Prabhupada says, he turns and looks to the face of his friend, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and knows the difficulties he's going through, then at once the suffering that bird experiences is gone. All of his anxieties are gone. In other words, the Lord is there in our heart looking out for us. And because of that, he's aware of what our anxieties and distress and difficulties are. Now, as this verse notes, he, the Lord, he understands the anxiety of Brahma and the distress that he's feeling. And knowing this, he speaks to Lord Brahma accordingly so that it removes that distress, that anxiety, that fear. And this is something we can really look to appreciate. How amazing the Lord is that for all the different living entities in the world, he understands as the super soul in the heart of all living entities, be there mosquitoes, pigs, or human beings, or demigods. He understands what they need, what their anxieties are, what their distresses are, what their ups and downs are. What's that it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that he carries what we lack and preserves what we have. So he knows what our strengths and weaknesses are. So in this way, he's able to look after the well-being of a devotee better than anyone can. This requires a level of surrender on our part. As it mentions in this verse here, that the Lord's Brahma's very anxious, but the Lord understood his intention. So this is an important point too, because sometimes our external activity, due to the conditioning, as it mentions in this verse, with the modes of material nature, might be different than our genuine intention. We have the intention to very expertly perform our sadhana, very attentively chant our japa, very focusedly read the books. But the function that may take place is sometimes different than that. Most times different than that for most of us. So the thing is that the Lord understands our intention. He understood Brahma's intention here was to do this service, to do it correctly, and to please the Lord with it. A devotee never looks to perform his service for self-gratification, for self-satisfaction, or for the endorsement of his own position or ego or idea of himself. The devotee always wants to execute his service for the pleasure of the Lord. This is the qualifying factor of those activities for Krishna, those activities for ourselves. Prabhupada was walking in LA. This would have been 1972. It was a morning walk, and he was walking with the devotees, and he said, I'm looking at all of these houses. Prabhupada used the word bungalow. I like the way he did that, but I'm looking at all of these houses and thinking how nice if they were all temples of Krishna. So it wasn't Prabhupada's idea that there'd be one temple in each city, but that every house would be a temple. And those of us in the Grihastha ashram, which I assume is the majority of the people attending this speaking here, is that those of us in the Grihastha ashram, we have to have the deity in our home. We have to turn the house into a temple. Prabhupada says that placing the deity in the home changes the temple from a place for sense gratification to a place for the service of the Lord. So this is the mood of a devotee, how to do something to please the Lord. Make my house a place for the Lord to feel satisfied to stay. Make my activities, regardless, even if I have some secular job I have to execute, which most of us do. Very few of us have the benefit of simply living in the temple full time and doing full time service. Those that do are very fortunate, but those of us that are outside the circumstance, we have to execute our job in such a way that it still serves to keep us Krishna conscious. It still serves to help us become situated on the path back to home, back to Godhead. In my particular situation, I'm very fortunate because where I work, it's a retail place, and I see devotees all day long because it's a large store right in the devotee community. So devotees are coming in and out all day. There's always some conversation about what was said in the class or what festival is coming up or different things like this. So this is a means to always try and remember Krishna. When I get my break, I read something and then I try to remember that. And the first devotee I bump into, I try to share it with them because once we read something and then we share what we read, it becomes cemented in our memory. So this type of association, even in a secular work scenario, is very beneficial for us. And maybe we don't have association with devotees, but there's internal things we can do. There's one very funny story with Srila Prabhupada. I believe he was in Mayapur, and one devotee came and was presenting an idea that he had for spreading Krishna consciousness. And it was a very grandiose, far reaching, let's just say impractical idea. And as he was speaking, Srila Prabhupada reached his hand up, went around his head, and scratched his nose. And everyone chuckled that knew. It's one of those, if you know, you know. So you can scratch your nose like this, or you can go scratch your nose like that. So that was Prabhupada's indication. So sometimes while I'm working, if someone has some idea or they present something and it's just a little far, I'll reach up and do that, just a little reminder to myself, of Prabhupada's practical understanding of how to be Krishna conscious. So this is the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna's relationship with the living entity, looking after us, particularly as his verse describes, looking after Lord Brahma, understanding Lord Brahma's intention and facilitating that. He speaks to Brahma knowing what his fears are and knowing what words to say to remove that distress, that anxiety, that fear. This is one of the understood qualities of a good leader, is that they know how to relieve the anxiety and distress of those that are working under them, those that they're guiding, those that they're leading, those that they're going on the path back to home, back to Godhead with. So this is one of the qualities of the Lord. Of course, this is how he works and how he looks after the well-being of a devotee. Those of us that are parents, I'm sure practically everyone in this Sangam, those of us that are parents, we can understand that. We see our children, we understand their actions, we strive to protect them, and we act many times without them having to ask us to. We understand what they're trying to do, what they're wanting to accomplish, and we facilitate that, even without being asked. All because of our deep love for a child and for their well being. So, this is how the Lord sees us for his children. He's looking out for our well being, he's filled with love for us. And this starts with Lord Brahma. This starts right at the top with Lord Brahma. Now, it's acknowledged in this verse that Brahma has different species of human beings he's got to account for. Those that are in the human species, those that are lower than the human species, those that are higher. Prabhupada uses the word superhuman. We know that means the demigods. It doesn't mean Marvel comic book characters. Those guys have all got their superhuman powers, but it's all fictional. But there are actually demigods that have powers like that. Where else do they get these ideas from? So there are all these different varieties, and it's noted in the Vishnu Purana, Jalaja Nava Lakshani, Stavara Lakshavimsati, Krimaho Rudra Sankyaka, Pakshina Dashalakshanam, Trimsha Lakshani Pashava, Chatur Lakshani Manusa. So this translates that there are 900,000 species living in the water. I'm always amused when you see on the news some science report that they've discovered a new species. Well, of course you have. There's 900,000 species living in the water. And then that there are 2 million non-moving living entities, trees and plants. Then there's 1,100,000 species of insects and reptiles. And I'll tell you that 1 million of them live right here in the state of Florida. And the other 100,000 live in Australia, where they're all dangerous. Then it says that there are 1 million species of birds, 3 million varieties of four-legged animals. Prabhupada specifically uses the word four-legged animals in his translation. And then finally, there are 400,000 species of human beings. 400,000 species of human beings. Now, Prabhupada reminds us that only a small portion of that 400,000 are considered civilized. So, of course, our goal is to advance ourselves to that level of being civilized. So, this is Brahma's job, to take the desires of the living entities, facilitate types of bodies for them, even some, and Prabhupada mentions these desires, they get mixed, and we don't, how does he say it here? Let me go back here. Here we go. Lord Brahma has to accommodate, 9 into 9 becomes 81, 81 and 81 becomes mixed, and thus we ultimately do not know how the different places and situations of illusion increase. So the understanding of that statement is that all of these different bodies, these 8,400,000 different types of species, they're all different types of illusions that have to be given to the living entity according to their desires. So it's a very, very monumental job. And all of this is based on these 3 modes of material nature. And we see that even sometimes these 3 modes of material nature impact our devotional service. There's a section of this 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam that describes devotional service under the modes of material nature, that there are different types of devotional service, and how these modes mix is almost unending. I have a friend that is an expert painter, not artistic like drawings and things, but painting like houses and buildings and stuff. And he's been doing this for, 30 or 40 years. And he's so expert in this, he can look at a particular color. Now, we know that there's the 3 basic primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, and that these 3 colors mix together to give us orange and greens and this and that's. So this guy is so expert, he can look at a color and understand that it's got this percentage of blue, this percentage of red. You need to add a little bit more yellow to bring out this, that, too. I mean, that's just how expert he is from years and years of doing this. So it's the same with Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma knows that the particular qualities mixed together here need this type of body. So we can understand this idea of having 4 heads or 100 heads, depending on the size of the universe one's governing, is a necessity. Prabhupada mentions that Lord Brahma has to accommodate the different places and situations for the various bodies of the conditioned souls. This is part of his service. Just like as a temple president, as a temple commander, we have to facilitate the different services of the devotees living within the ashram. Sometimes that's as simple as, okay, this one's a pot washer. Let me just get them into the kitchen. They can wash pots and be very good. Oh, this one's got treasury abilities. Let me put them in charge of the treasury. This one has great speaking skills and knowledge. Let me arrange for them to go out and do Sankirtan and speak with the public. So this is part of the responsibility of a manager in the ashram, is to understand all of these different circumstances and how to engage people. And this is what Brahma does. He understands these circumstances. He understands the details of these different bodies, and he arranges for the living entities to have the body that's according to what they need. This is why Prabhupada says no one in the universe can understand how difficult it is to perform this task. Just like unless you've been a temple president, it's very hard to appreciate the activity of what a temple president has to do, all of the intricacies. The New York Rath Yatra that I just was speaking about, most people don't even think about the fact that you got to get a permit. You can't just show up on Fifth Avenue with 3 big carts and thousands of people and go down the street. You have to have permits. You can't just go to Washington Square Park and set up a bunch of tents and start passing out food. You got to get permits. So all of that behind the scenes stuff, what to speak of the quantity of boga that has to be bought and arranging for the storage of that boga. And that means you got to rent coolers and all of these different things. So what to speak of on a universal platform, this is why it's mentioned, this is a task for Lord Brahma alone. And it gets more and more intense as the size of the universe gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do we resolve all this? This is the key and a wonderful guide to us in our own devotional practices. This is how we should read, listen, and understand Srimad Bhagavatam as a guide for our own devotional service. Just like in my speaking about the different acharyas, which I am known for, our purpose in studying their lives is to see from their examples how my life can benefit, what difficulties I can avoid, what obstacles I can sidestep. So Brahma is so sincere. Brahma is so dependent on the Lord that the Lord speaks to him without Brahma even having to ask for his help. We have the scene in this verse. Brahma's sitting there. He sees the devastating waters in front of him. He sees the task in front of him, and he's filled with anxiety. And so the Lord immediately reciprocates. And B, that the Lord knows exactly what to say to encourage his devotees. The Lord knows how to speak to them. Of course, we get this in the next verse, but I mean, we should note in the previous verse, it does say that Lord Brahma does pray for help. But after praying for help, he feels himself exhausted. The mental energy, the observing and trying to think all this through, and then the offering of prayers, he feels himself exhausted and he falls silent. The previous verse mentions this. He falls silent. And he knows, I've done everything I can do. Physically, prayerfully, I've done it all. Now, my dear Lord, it's up to you. This is the mood of surrender that is essential for our advancement in Krishna consciousness, is essential for the Lord to reciprocate with us. And this is the type of surrender that we see in the lives of the great devotees. Draupadi, she's brought before this court of supposedly protective elders who are sitting silent while she's abused by these horrible personalities. They're trying to take her cloth off, her sari, and she's holding on to it with one hand, trying to save herself, and praying to the Lord with the other hand, oh, my Lord, please protect me. But I mean, she's a single woman, and these are great Maharatis. It's described a Maharati can fight with 100 elephants at once. So, what hope does she have of fending off Maharati? So finally, she throws both hands up. Now, one would think, oh, this means the cloth is going to be taken away. She's going to be exposed. But Krishna provides at that moment of total surrender, Krishna provides unlimited cloth. And that cloth comes and flows. And Duryodhana, they become exhausted trying to take all this cloth, and it's just piling up and piling up and piling up. Some of the paintings show that there's sweat pouring off of their head as they just keep their, they're exhausted, but they can't get to the end of it because Krishna has stepped in and protected. Arjuna and Bhishma Dev on the Battle of Kurukshetra. Duryodhana is insulting Bhishma Dev by saying, you're taking it easy on the Pandavas because they're your nephews. I see that you could be fighting more than you are, but you're being easy on, specifically, you're being easy on Arjuna. Now, to a warrior, this is a great insult that he's not fighting to his full capacity. So Bhishma Dev says, all right. He says, I'm going to fight so fiercely the next day, especially at Arjuna, that Krishna will have to break his own promise to protect Arjuna. Now, Krishna's promised, I'm not going to fight. We all remember the story. Duryodhana and Arjuna, Yudhishthira, both came to Krishna. Duryodhana decided to sit right next to Krishna's head so he could immediately speak to him. Yudhishthira sat at Krishna's feet. Now, if you're laying on your back, sleeping in your bed, some people sleep on their back, some on their side, some on their stomach, whatever. But if you're laying on your back, when you wake up, the first thing you see is your feet. So the first thing he sees is Yudhishthira. Now, Duryodhana has been there prior to that. But Krishna says, oh, I'm sorry, but I saw Yudhishthira first, so he gets the request first. And Krishna says, I will give one of you my 18 Akshihinis, my 18 armies, and I give one of you myself, but I won't fight. Now Duryodhana thinks, easy call, we'll take the armies. But Yudhishthira knows, no, my dear Lord, I want you. So this mood of surrender. So in that mood, Arjuna's chariot's being driven by Krishna, but Krishna's not fighting. But Bhishma Dev pushes so hard to kill Arjuna that Krishna has to step in. So again, Krishna protects his devotees. Nrsimhadev, Prahlad Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Durvasa Muni. Our scriptures are filled with stories of devotees that gave complete surrender and received complete protection by the Lord. So this is really the mood that we want to cultivate in our devotional service. This is the mood that the acharyas give us. This is our standard, to always depend upon Krishna, to always count on Krishna's shelter. And then he will always be there for us. And it's interesting because in the Gita, when he promises this, he doesn't say it himself. Prabhupada laughs in the class when he speaks on this verse. He said, because Krishna is very tricky, he may change his mind. And then Prabhupada chuckles. But he says to Arjuna, you declare it, that my devotee will never be vanquished, because Krishna always supports the word of his devotee. If the devotee says it, then Krishna understands that I have to support that. So in this way, Krishna's always there to protect us, always there to give us the shelter. Now, in the next verse, it shows even further how the Lord interacts with each devotee according to their circumstances. And we'll leave the full details of that verse for the person who gives that class next. But it's really a superb presentation. Now, in this verse, it's interesting that the word at the very end of the purport that Prabhupada uses for describing Lord Brahma is Vidatta. Vidatta, the literal Sanskrit meaning of this word is ruling or governing or administering. So Prabhupada details this all into one word, the regulator. Brahma, the regulator. Now, in the world of fictional movies and literature, they have the Avenger and the Punisher and the Enforcer and so on and so on and so on, all these different make-believe characters. But these are all mere shadows of the supreme regulator of the universe, namely Lord Brahma. Where the living entity ends up is designated by Brahma. How long the lifespan of that body the living entity has is designated by Lord Brahma. These other so-called personalities, they don't even have the basic trikala gap, the ability to see past, present, and future. This Lord Brahma has all of that. He's able to see all of these things. So this is really a great understanding of Lord Brahma's position. In addition to creating all these things, he's regulating how it goes. Now, another important point here is that in the next verse, Vishnu makes a statement that I understand your mood and I'm going to grant it because this has all been done before. This has all been granted, he says. This has all been done before. Sometimes in the activities of our ISKCON society, we see things that take place that discourage us, that distress us. And sometimes people like to point out these anomalies and difficulties and focus on them and think of what a great distraction it is, what a great disturbance it is. But in reality, all these things that go on have happened before. If we study Chaitanya Charitamrita specifically, we see, I mean, sometimes there's discussion of devotees that fall down. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have the discussion of Lord Chaitanya's personal servant, Krishnadas, falling down and being drug away by the gypsy ladies, the Badaharis. Not Badahari like our dear friend, but the Badahari gypsies. And Lord Chaitanya has to personally go and drag him back. We have the father and uncle of Raghunath Das Goswami. They were embezzling money from the government and spending it. Chaitanya Charitamrita is very plain, spending it on dancing girls and other things. Well, if you're spending money on dancing girls, we can pretty much understand what those other things are. So what's going on? You know, then you've got different devotees that are presenting different types of contradicting philosophies that have to be. This was the reason, one of the main reasons for the Keturi festival organized by Narottam Das Thakur under the direction of Janaba Mata was that there were many different philosophies of Lord Chaitanya's teachings developing. And so they wanted to bring all of this together under one umbrella, unified, of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So these things have all happened before, all of these difficulties, all of these misunderstandings, all of these problems, but it's nothing new. And therefore the Lord says, you know, I've granted these desires that you're giving to me. I've granted them all many times before. In other words, Krishna is saying, don't worry, I've got you covered. That's what we want in a dear friend, right? We have someone we're so close to that if there's some difficulty, some problem arises, that we know that they're there for us. As they say, that I've got your back. This means that no one's going to be able to get to you. You're going to protect your front. I'm going to protect your back. So these verses from the Bhagavatam, they serve as a beacon for us. They serve as a direction for us, a guiding light even. What's that verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam? The Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun. It has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Bhagavat Purana. So this is really our impetus for taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. We should judge our advancement by three things. How are my rounds going? How much am I reading every day? And how much am I hearing every day? Hearing, we're so blessed in this current age we live in. I mean, it's Kali Yuga and it's got all its shortfalls, and the leaders are all completely nuts. But the reality is that we are blessed because we have an unlimited opportunity to hear from so many persons. I mean, I'm sitting here in Alachua, Florida. You're sitting there in Africa, and we're having a Bhagavatam class together by means of this modern technology. It's amazing. I always point this out. This little device right here, tiny little thing. Every one of Srila Prabhupada's books, every one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures, as well as lectures of unlimited other devotees, are all right here. And if you happen to be old like me and have to wear hearing aids, it's all linked to your hearing aids, so you can hear it without any trouble. So, we have this opportunity in this day and age to absorb ourselves completely and make that the basis, the foundation, the impetus for executing the rest of our required occupational duties. Whether that occupational duty is as a Brahmin in the form of a temple president or pujari, whether that occupational duty is as a grihasta in the form of some type of business or money-making activity to support the family and thus support the temple. Whatever our activities are, we have the rare chance to always absorb ourselves. So this is the wonderful point that's made in these kind of verses. Okay, we may be in distress, we may be in anxiety, but when we turn to the Lord for shelter, he will always look out for us. He will always be there for us. Because as he says here, I have granted these desires before, so there's no problem. So thank you very much. I'm going to finish there, a little bit over 45 minutes. If we listen to Srila Prabhupada's classes, sometimes his classes are only 20 minutes. I mean, quite a number of Prabhupada's classes, 20, 30 minutes, 32 minutes, 28 minutes, like that. Of course, that's because Prabhupada could very concisely present everything very clearly. Some of us, like myself, need a little more time to go over those things. But at any rate, that's my thoughts on this verse. Very, very nice verse, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity on this verse, because this creative energy of Lord Brahma is really an essential standard and essential example for us as we go about our daily devotional activities. Despite all difficulties surrounding us, we have to be focused on taking shelter of the Lord. So thank you very much. Dave, I turn it back over to you. If you want to open up for questions, we can do a few minutes of that, or however you want to proceed from here.
Hare Krishna, so much, Prabhuji. It's always so blissful to hear from you. And also just to see you. And in fact, I was so pleasantly surprised to hear you talk about your working, and you are fortunate devotees come around, and sometimes something you read, you just share with the devotees. It's very encouraging because some of us who are not living in the monastic life sometimes are told, I wouldn't say told, but kind of presumed to us that as long as you do not live in the monastery and live a monastic life, you are not a devotee. Or you are not good devotee enough. But when we come across devotees like your humble self and sharing this knowledge with us, we feel that, okay, after all, we are not lost. Like most Christians will say that if you do not belong to Christ, you are lost. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, realization.
I'd like to comment on that statement you made because, I've been a devotee for a while.
Yeah.
I joined ISKCON in 1973, Gaur Purnima. And, back then, it was very clear. You either lived in the temple or you were in Maya. And we were all brahmacharis and brahmachaриnis, a term which Prabhupada created, by the way, brahmacharini. You don't find it anywhere in the Shastra. So, the idea was that that was the way you went back to home, back to Godhead, and anything else was just Maya. But we see that that's not how society works. That's not how our Vedic history is there. That's not how the books are presented if we look at what's in them. Because in reality, the monastic order, the brahmacharis, the sannyasis, they're the minimal number in society. The vast majority of society is the grihastas. If you go to Jaipur and Mangal Arti in the morning, there's 4,000 or 5,000 people. And none of those are devotees living a monastic lifestyle in the ashram. They're all regular business people, but they live in Jaipur and they know only one thing, that Govindaji is my Lord. And they're constantly thinking of him. They have his picture in their shop. They give their donations to him, and they go daily to worship him. But they're all members of the Grihasta community of the occupational activities. So, we have a responsibility, but it's my firm belief. Someone may argue this with me, but it's my firm belief that when Prabhupada was establishing this ISKCON society in the late 60s and early 70s, he knew that these are all young boys and girls, 19, 20, at the oldest, 25 years old. If you'd been a devotee for 3 years, you're like, oh, Jai Prabhu, such a senior devotee. I remember when I joined the temple, my temple president had been a devotee for 5 years. It was like, oh my God, he's going back to Godhead right now. So the reality is that this idea is just not founded. It's not there. We have to have these different occupations. And I firmly believe, as I said, that Prabhupada expected, okay, they're all 20-year-old kids now, but eventually they're going to be 50, 60 years old. They're going to have had children, had lives, businesses, etc., because this is the way a society functions. But as Prabhupada so many times said, all you have to do is insert Krishna. I mean, we've heard Prabhupada say it on numerous lectures. You don't have to change anything. What do you mean you don't have to change anything? All you have to do is insert Krishna. In other words, go ahead and get married. Go ahead and have a house. Go ahead and have a business. Go ahead and have a job. Just put Krishna in the middle of all that. That's how society functions. So yeah, that idea that if you're not a brahmachari living in the temple, you're in nonsense, that's old school.
Yeah. I mean, as new as I am, even when I joined, this same unfortunate song was sung all the time, everywhere. But like you're saying, now by Guru Krishna's grace, most of us are becoming aware that is not the case. But I have this question, and because, like you said, 3 things to test how we are advancing in spiritual life. One is hearing, our eagerness to hear. And I have heard from quite a number of devotees, stalwart devotees, who say that one should not plan. Do not make any attempt to plan for anything in your life. After all, what is the value of your planning? Because at the end of the day, Krishna's plan is what is going to reign. It's not your tiny brain's plan. But we are seeing, at least I'll say that I am seeing from these 2 verses that we read here that the Lord saw within Lord Brahma's desire to create and how perturbed he was. So Lord Brahma was thinking how to do something, and then when the Lord saw that he was intent on doing something, and then the Lord came in, intervened, and then it gave him the enlightenment. So I would want to hear from you whether devotees are encouraged to plan, or they should just stay there and do nothing. In line with that same question is some people say that, like Draupadi, you were talking about Draupadi. Draupadi was trying to defend herself by holding on to her sari not to be stripped naked. But eventually she couldn't do it. She had to raise her hands up, and then Krishna did. And so why do you have to struggle at all to do anything for yourself? Which to me does not make sense either, because if something bad is happening to me and I don't do anything and I'm just expecting Krishna, then why did Krishna give me intelligence to? So I would like you to shed some light on these things I'm trying to ask these questions on, Prabhuji, if you may.
Well, so there's two questions you put forth there. First of all, making plans or not making plans. If we look at our acharyas, for instance, Rupa Goswami, when Rupa Goswami was planning to retire, making his decision to retire from government service as Dabir Kash, as the prime minister, the personal secretary to Nawab Hussain Shah, he took all the wealth he had accumulated and divided it up, gave someone charity, gave some, but some he kept with a banker as a emergency fund, so to speak. He planned ahead because that emergency fund was then accessed by Sanatan Goswami to help with his own extracting himself from the government service of Nawab Hussain Shah. Let's take the example I just used at the beginning of the class of Rath Yatra. If you just show up on Fifth Avenue with 3 massive carts on a Sunday morning, you're not going to be greeted very well. You have to plan ahead. You have to arrange for permits. You have to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a difference between, as you said, the words planning things with our puny brain independently and making plans in conjunction with Krishna's desire. We can understand Krishna's desire very easily by reading the books. This is how we understand what Krishna wants from us, what the acharyas expect of us. It's all right there in the books. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Instruction, a very, very important book for practical understanding of how to be a devotee. So those things are all there. So we have a guideline on how to appreciate what Krishna wants. Now, what we have to do is put what we want to accomplish in line with Krishna's desires for us. And then once we insert Krishna, then we have to make plans. If I'm a householder and I have a daughter or a son that I want to go to college, I have to make plans in advance for saving some money for that. Or just this past weekend, I officiated at a wedding, and the wedding was very elaborate. And as my wife and I discussed later, very expensive. So if you've got a daughter and you're going to arrange for the marriage, you have to start putting aside money quite in advance. You have to arrange for the vineyard. So all of these things take planning. So it's not that the planning, Prabhupada says this about Mayavadis, they experience through their senses so much illusion, so they decide, oh, we won't do anything then. So it's not that we give up the senses have to be engaged, but we engage them with Krishna. So it's not that we give up planning. We have to make plans in our life, but we make those plans in conjunction with Krishna's direction, with the advice of Krishna's devotees. My wife and I, throughout our 40 plus years of marriage together, wherever we've resided, the first thing we always asked was, will we have the association of devotees? If we wouldn't, okay, I'm not going to live in that place. And if we did, okay, then that's a place to live. So these types of plans that are in conjunction with our being Krishna conscious, that's very much necessary. And I'm sorry, what was the second point you raised?
Oh, the second point was Draupadi. Draupadi was trying to.
Oh, yes. Suffering.
Yeah.
Prabhupada speaks on this too. Prabhupada says that we shouldn't think that we're going to become a devotee of Krishna. We're not going to have any difficulties. Difficulties are there. Look at the Pandavas. Look at Ambarish Maharaj. Look at Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, his own father. I know devotees that once they became devotees and took to Krishna consciousness, his family disowned them. So those type of things will happen. But our ability to take shelter of Krishna in spite of these, or when these difficulties are present, determines our actual sincerity. As it says in this purport, that the Lord understood Brahma's intention. So Draupadi may be trying to hold on because what is it's a natural tendency of a woman to protect herself from being exposed.
Yeah.
But then when she realized, I can't, okay, my Lord, I can only depend upon you. So this actually isn't seen as a detriment that, oh, she, no, it's seen as complete surrender. So this is the important thing. This is the important thing to understand is that difficulties are going to be there. It's how we deal with them and how Krishna conscious we stay in spite of them that determines what our level of advancement is and what our freedom from those difficulties is going to ultimately be.
Well, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Again, I would like to say thank you so much for these answers. And that also leads me to asking for your opinion. When I say opinion, I mean your spiritual, practical, scriptural opinion to this question I have. It's not a question per se, but it's a concern. Like you rightly said, we are in this age of Kali, which is, we all know is the most horrible age. Yet, there are so many wonderful, good opportunities. Just like we are all in different parts of the world, sometimes different continents, yet we can come together to discuss about the Lord. So it is so advantageous to have this opportunity. But that also comes with some complexities in the sense that we have different speakers coming to speak, and they're all amazing, but everybody also speaks based on their realization from the scriptures and their own lives also. So like today, we have your humble self here sharing with us, and what you've shared with us, the answers to my questions, they're all very satisfying to me. Tomorrow, we may have another devotee, Prabhu A, Prabhu B, Prabhu Z. He also comes and then he says, what at all can your tiny mind, brain think about? Just surrender to Krishna. Don't do anything, don't think it. So we get into these opposing information. What would be your suggestion that those who are hearing from different speakers and most likely getting opposing information on the same theme, what should we do?
There is no encouragement from Prabhupada that we should be blind followers, just accept what anyone says. Anytime anyone says something, it should be backed up by Shastra, by Guru, and by Sadhu. In other words, by the scriptural standard, by the standard that we see in the lives of the Acharyas, and by the standard we see in the community of Vaishnavas. If someone presents an idea that is outside of those three, then we can politely understand that that's not necessarily the direction we want to go. Now, furthermore, Haridas Thakur explains that there's 4 ways to associate with devotees. One is those who are our seniors, that we take what they say, take their instructions, and move forward. 2 is those who are our contemporaries. We confide our mind in them, they confide our mind in us. 3 is those who are our juniors, who we guide and direct. And 4 is those who chant the Hare Krishna mantra, but that we respect from a distance. So we don't necessarily intimately mix with all of those 4. Especially in the last category, we're respectful. But now, before we can make that assertion, though, we have to be informed. We have to be knowledgeable ourselves. If I'm going to, I don't know, we used to do a thing here in Alachua, a little fundraising. We'd have a prasadam tasting contest, and so you'd pay a certain amount of money to be on the platform, 10, 12 devotees, whatever. And then prasadam, we made it would be judged, So to do that, you have to know what it should taste like, what the proper standard is. In the same way, if I'm going to hear from someone, I have to be knowledgeable myself on the subject, maybe not as much as them, maybe more so than them, but I have to be knowledgeable myself to be able to understand if what they're saying is correct or incorrect. And they have to be, as I say, presenting it on these 3 standards, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. This is how we protect ourselves from persons who might just be saying anything in any time according to their own whim.
Yeah.
We have to be informed. That means we have to read the books. We have to listen to Prabhupada's lectures. We have to know what is the standard if I'm going to question the standard.
Well, again, thank you so much, Prabhuji. I've always been saying that, it's something I say and I try to live it just to protect myself, that Srila Prabhupada is the gold standard, and that whatever someone says or whatever someone does, if I compare whatever this individual is saying or whatever this individual is doing to Srila Prabhupada's, and there is contradiction, then I have to respectfully and humbly ask why what you're saying, what you're doing is different from what Srila Prabhupada said, and why do I have to take yours and reject Srila Prabhupada's? So I don't know, but this is what I try to do to safeguard my little creeper so that I don't lose it, because there are others, like you said, like the 4th class, or 4th group, that they are devotees, but you have to respect them from a distance. So I have always been thinking in my mind, just to safeguard myself, that Srila Prabhupada is the gold standard, and whatever someone says or does, I compare that to what Srila Prabhupada said, and if it does not tally, then I better be extra careful. I don't know if it is a good thing I'm doing, or by doing so, alienating some wonderful devotees or whatever, but that is what I do. And I want to seek your opinion. I'm seeking your opinions lots today, Prabhuji. I need them.
When we're in the position of speaking, if someone questions what we're speaking, we should be able to very humbly and be very humble and balanced in our answer to that. If we become offended, oh, how dare you question what I'm saying? If we become, if we feel challenged when someone questions what we're saying and we can't support it, then that's not very good for us. So the speaker has an obligation to be well versed in Prabhupada's instructions, to be well versed in their application to our own lives and to be able to understand how to move forward in that way. If a speaker becomes or feels threatened by questions to the points they make, then that means they may not be so well versed in these other topics. I see Varaha's got his hand up. Let's see what he's got to say.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this last response also, because it answers a bigger question that some of us have had here prior. So thank you so much. Shrimavara Prabhu, please you may unmute.
God, this is a humble obeisance. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thanks hearing you. And I have some reactions to and contributions to some of the questions asked by Sadhu. So many things, but let me start from the last one. The Prabhupada is the gold standard. Just like for the Christian, this is quite supposed to be the gold standard. But then there's the church. And then after a while, the church has a position different from what Jesus Christ said and taught. And I see the same thing happening in ISKCON today. Prabhupada might be our gold standard, but then there is ISKCON. And then, according to time and place and circumstance, ISKCON believes that it is their role to fix things or to make things go the way that will be better for the future of the mission, rather than what Prabhupada said. So there is this dichotomy between what the founder Acharya said and what takes place according to time, place, and according to what the mission or the institution stands for. So we find ourselves in the midst of this also. So that's my first reaction. I will come back later on to the other ones. If you have something to say to that.
Well, here again, if we're trying to be innovative in spreading Krishna consciousness, that innovation should not deviate from the path Prabhupada's given us. It may take a different appearance. For instance, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, in traditional Indian culture, there is no such thing as a brahmacharya ashram. The ladies don't move into the ashram and live there. But when Prabhupada came to preach in America, he saw that the men and women are seen equal and that the ladies also want some ability to take up this Krishna consciousness. Many of them had taken up, as the term was at the time, hippie lifestyles and rejected their parents and family. So what to do? So he created this idea of an ashram where the women could live and be protected and still execute their Krishna consciousness. So this may be different from what we saw in traditional culture, but it wasn't deviating from the principle of giving everyone a chance to become Krishna conscious. In the same way, in our own expansion of Krishna consciousness since Prabhupada's departure, we may bring so many things in, but as long as they don't deviate from the basic principle, then that's going to be something that's acceptable. But if what's being brought in deviates from Prabhupada's principle, even if it's innovative and this and that, then that has to be questioned. Yeah, my wife just mentioned, Bhakti Tirtha is a wonderful example of that. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was one of those people that he turned at the time in the 70s, because he was a friend of mine, he turned that type of preaching on its ear, but it didn't deviate from Prabhupada's philosophy, and it expanded Krishna consciousness on horizons that nobody ever thought of before. So, there's that type of thing.
Well,
very much for that. Anyway, I don't want to drag that too far. Then there is the question of planning and not planning. And of course, we know there's this saying that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Yeah. But then when it comes to surrender, then some school of thought feel that once you have surrendered, that means you have no more plan. Once you have surrendered, it means that there's no plan B. You simply give your all into whatever that is happening, and you accept whatever that happens as scripture. But once you start planning, then there's no question of surrender. This is the argument. I may not necessarily buy into it, but it also has some logic. That if you totally surrender, then there's no question of making plan B or planning for something else. Your plan is only about how to execute what you have given your life to. So one devotee says sometimes you don't plan. This is what drives that thinking. Planning means that you have your own personal personal plan how to be successful in life. But once you have taken the Krishna consciousness and you surrender your life to Krishna, then your whole life is about what pleases Krishna, what Krishna wants, not your own plan. So we have to understand what is behind that one plan. It's not just like planning for organization or planning your activities or planning your life. There is a limit that once you give your life to God, you just continue accepting whatever that happens to you as good. Whatever that happens to you, whether good or bad, you accept it as part of the plan for your surrender, to surrender more, be able to surrender more. But once you start making your individual planning, then it's no longer surrender. So that is the logic behind that don't plan. So I hope you can also comment on that.
Well, I'll give you an example. I'm active in the group Wisdom of the Sages. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is a very broad preaching arrangement by Raghunathan Kastuba, and I'm one of the Sage Group leaders. And in my group, I've been doing this for 4 years now. I've got members that have stayed with me that have made a plan that every day now I'll chant 4 rounds. Okay, now I'll chant 8 rounds. Okay, now I'm chanting 16 rounds. Every day I'll read 15 minutes from Bhagavatam. And now those persons are up to the 5th canto. So this is a plan. It's a very specific, written out, documented plan that they keep of what I'm doing, and can look back and see the days that they were successful, the days they weren't. And this encourages them in their advancement in devotional service. So to those persons that say we don't make any plans, I would have to disagree. But we have to make plans that will bring us closer to Krishna. I had an opportunity at one point. My wife and I were, I was struggling to find employment, let's say. And I had an opportunity to work at a large grocery store chain. And they wanted to bring me in a significant role. But to work in that environment meant I would have to come in contact with meat products. And I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. So I had a plan to support myself, but it did not include going against certain principles, which were my guideline under Prabhupada's direction. Shortly after that, an arrangement came about, and I got full employment in a very nice situation that didn't involve any of that. So that's how we have to look at our planning. Is my planning putting me closer to Krishna? Is it in guideline with what Krishna wants? And is it sanctioned by the Shastras? That's how we have to look at planning. We have to plan. It's very simple. I want to get up for Mangalarti. I have to plan to go to bed early. If I stay up till 11 o'clock at night, I'm not getting up at Mangalarti. So that's a plan. So we have to plan our life to become Krishna conscious. Plans that are outside of that, that's where we start getting into gray areas there. That would be my response to that statement there. Yeah. I'm going to have to apologize, and we're going to have to wrap this up a little bit. speaking of work, I do have to get off to my occupational job.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this time spent with us, filled with love, wisdom, and lots of gems to live by. And we can't thank our Parampara enough for sending you to us and giving us this enlightenment. So dear devotees, we're going
I always try to remember the Prabhupada said, I have made your good fortune, now you please make others. So we have an obligation to share what Prabhupada gave us.
Yeah.
And you all have given me that opportunity to satisfy Srila Prabhupada. So thank you very much. And I'm particularly appreciative to Giridhari Puja for reaching out to me again. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Giridhari Puja, thank you so much. And Prabhuji is talking about Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj. Of course, he is my Diksha Guru, Diksha Guru to quite a number of devotees here. Yesterday was his
now with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is your Diksha Guru. You've been around a long time, so you're not a junior devotee. You know the answer to these questions you're putting out there.
I know some of the answers, but I'm not 100% sure. So it's more like getting an affirmation to what I think. Yeah. But I was trying to say that yesterday was his TT disappearance. So, of course, next week we're going to have a bigger celebration in his honor, 20th TT disappearance. So thank you, and thank your precious wife for reminding us of Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj. And dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace CHATURATMA, Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us all. Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Vajjapapa Trivesa, Krishna Krishna, Patitanam Sagatyo, Vasudevyo Namo Namaha.
All glories to His Grace CHATURATMA Prabhu ki
Jai.
jai.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.